Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Hope all is well with you. It is the 22nd of October 2017, recording for tomorrow's program when it will be available, well, in many different places. SoundCloud, iTunes, my Facebook page, the Land of Israel Facebook page. You got to check out not only my show, but all of the wonderful programming offered to you here, the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Hope you're doing well. You can be in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter, at Josh Hasten. On today's show, a bunch of news. We haven't done this in a few weeks, where we just talk about everything going on here in the state of Israel. A lot of it is, unfortunately, negative, but of course there's some positive news as well, which I will share with you throughout the show. Broadcasting here today from Gush Etzion, Israel, Judea, just south of Jerusalem. Top story today in the Jerusalem Post. Over the weekend, the IDF hit 3 Syrian regime artillery positions several hours after 5 projectiles were fired toward Israel. That is the Golan Heights. And sources now are saying that this perhaps was not spillover from the conflict in Syria, the war going on there, but perhaps this was an intentional attack against the state of Israel. 3 of the 5 projectiles fired by Syria landed in open areas, causing no injury or damage. The IDF released a statement saying, "We will not tolerate any attempt to harm the sovereignty of the state of Israel and its citizens. The Syrian regime is responsible for all that is happening on its territory." And of course, the Syrian foreign minister sent a letter to the UN accusing Israel of faking an attack on its own territory, as if Israel launched missiles at its own people and then went ahead and blamed the Syrians. "I could not make this stuff up," the Syrian foreign minister complaining to the UN. The question that we all have to ask is, will this situation in the north escalate? Will it spill over more into Israel on a regular basis, and will these attacks be intentional? Is Syria, or are some of the different groups up there, and it's very complicated, as you know, with all the different groups up there, are they trying to draw Israel into the conflict? I don't know. Perhaps blame Israel for all their woes, like they do in the rest of, or in most of the Arab world, blaming Israel for their problems when they should be blaming their own governments. But then again, the propaganda out of their governments makes it very hard to blame anybody but Israel. But we'll have to pay attention to the situation in Syria on Israel's northern border, and hopefully Israel will not get dragged into the war in Syria. Israel's been trying to avoid that now ever since it started, more than, 5+ years, with 500,000 dead, yet the world's attention remains on Israeli pergolas built in Judea and Samaria. In other news, police the other day, on Friday, actually arrested a Ramallah man who stole a truck in Holon, that's in the Tel Aviv area, and he was going to carry out a terrorist attack. He had planned to use the truck in a ramming attack. He wanted to murder Israeli soldiers, and thank God he was caught. Somehow it was discovered that this truck was missing. A truck went stolen, and police were able to locate the missing truck and arrest the jihadist in the town of Rishon LeZion. He said to the authorities he planned to, quote, kill soldiers in the name of Al-Aqsa, and he expressed his regret he didn't manage to kill anyone. But he said, quote, "I will kill soldiers in the future." Now, with a statement like that, I am hoping that this guy is put away for life, because he is expressing his desire not only is he regretting that he wasn't able to carry out his attack and murder soldiers today, but he's already saying he's going to murder them in the future. So I hope the Justice Department, or whoever else, the courts, the law comes into play here and takes into account the fact that this guy's already planning the next attack. Let's keep him behind bars forever. The Petah Tikva Magistrates Court ordered that this jihadist be held for his remand be for 6 days. This guy should never see the light of day. He is already planning the next terror attack. Last week in Gush Etzion, just several days ago, you had another attempted attack an Arab got off at the Gush Junction, which has seen dozens of attacks over the last several years, with a knife, ran towards soldiers, and thank God an alert soldier shot him, and he was unable to harm any of those waiting for a bus there at the bus stop in the direction of Hebron, there being at the Gush Junction. Just happened just a few days ago, and I guess because it happened so often, I was watching the evening news, and literally Channel 1 only gave it 3 seconds of coverage within another story, and Channel 2 here in Israel, the main two news outlets, gave it about 7 seconds of coverage. So I guess on one hand, it's good that, thank God, nobody was hurt, and maybe it doesn't deserve that much coverage. But then again, witnessing this firsthand or having to experience this on a regular basis, I think people should be made aware. And I saw one article, and the JTA claimed that there have only been several attacks over the last several years at the Gush Junction, when that number is much higher. So that's either fake news, bad reporting, or a deliberate attempt to minimize the fact that so many people have been the target of terror attacks, whether successful or not. And thank God most have not been successful, but it's either trying to minimize it or it's bad journalism, one or the other. In that JT article I saw and commented it on, you can check it out on my Facebook page, playing down the fact that these attacks happen, unfortunately, have been happening over the last several years at the Gush Junction on a regular basis. And speaking of attacks, if you go to my Facebook page, I shared a link from David Wilder, who's a longtime spokesperson in Hebron, resident spokesperson, an attempted murder yesterday. It's not an easy video as well as a picture, which I shared yesterday on Saturday in Hebron. There were Jewish children, and I've been to this place before. I've seen where this is. I've gone down to a local spring, hanging out there, maybe swimming or whatnot, and you see in the video, you see an Arab passing by and hurling a rock, a large rock, down into the spring where this boy is, and then running away. The next picture I have here is the boy, a 7th grader, who was hit in the head, lost consciousness, and taken to Jerusalem for 10 stitches. Now, this could have ended much, much worse, but this is attempted murder. There's no other way to look at it. Rocks can kill. Rocks have killed. Rocks have maimed. Yesterday in Hebron, attempted murder of a child just because he is Jewish. That is the only reason this attack happened. And hopefully, using that video, the authorities can find this guy, maybe share a cell with this guy who was going to use his truck to ram into soldiers. Maybe the two of them can spend the rest of their lives behind bars. And hopefully it won't be a country club prison either. Hopefully they'll get what they deserve, a hard time, and not a country club lifestyle. So hopefully this guy will be caught. But that happened yesterday. Again, go to my Facebook page. It's difficult to see a young child with stitches in his head after getting hit in the head from a great height, by the way, throwing it down onto the Jewish children who were visiting a local spring. You are listening to Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. In other news, in Jerusalem's Old City, Israel National News reports that a swastika and a, quote, death to Jews was scrawled in a wall in Jerusalem's Old City. Police have opened an investigation today on Sunday into this anti-Semitic writing found in what is known as the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem's Old City, reported initially by Channel 10. The writing was in Hebrew and in Arabic: death to the Jews, the word Hamas, and a swastika. So this stuff happens in Europe. This stuff also happens in places like Jerusalem. How unfortunate, how sad, and hopefully with all the camera systems over there in the Old City, they'll be able to find their perpetrators. Israel National News also reports that Hamas, now in the last several weeks, there's been a lot of talk about Hamas and Fatah, the reconciliation of some kind between those two terror organizations, talking about the Palestinian Authority coming into Gaza and taking over certain aspects of the daily life there in Gaza. And of course, what does this do? This grants Hamas legitimacy in certain quarters. People all of a sudden are going to think Hamas is not a terrorist entity, of course, because they're forming this alliance with the PA, which in fact they themselves are a terrorist entity, yet they have gotten legitimacy all the way back from the Oslo Accords. But here you have the deputy, both should be gone, by the way. Both PA, both Fatah and Hamas should be gone, wiped out once and for all. But here you have Israel National News reporting the deputy Hamas leader saying that the group will never cut ties with Iran. So that just shows you exactly where they are, what they're thinking. They'll never put down their weapons against Israel. They'll never stop with the terror tunnels. They'll never stop with rockets fired against Israel, building rockets or at least getting ready for the next round, whenever that's going to be. This is a jihadist death cult, Hamas, and in no way should they be given legitimacy. And I'm sure they're already given, just because they said they were willing to sign this agreement, whatever it means, with the Palestinian Authority. But this is who they are, admitting that they will never cut ties with Iran. They are on the same page with the Iranians, and of course Iran, the biggest sponsor of world terrorism today. So let's keep that in mind when we are talking about Hamas. Israel should never negotiate with them, even when, Israel in the past, through a third party, has negotiated. I'm talking about the Gilad Shalit deal. Israel's negotiated either directly or indirectly with Hamas, which is a terrible mistake, and Israel should never do that again, and should not even think for 1 minute that Hamas is changing their stripes. Let's remember how many people they murdered since they were founded back in the late 1980s. So that is Hamas. Speaking of, and I'm sorry, so far it's been pretty bad in terms of the news, but this is where it starts. This is how it comes about. Palestinian Media Watch, of course, an amazing resource which translates Arabic into English and other languages, reports that mass murderers honored at a Palestinian, what they call Palestinian University. So new students, imagine going into your college campus in America. Maybe it's not too far-fetched with what's going on American campuses these days, but imagine walking onto campus and a big celebration, a ceremony is taking place, and the pictures behind the speakers include Abu Ali Mustafa, the head of the PLFP terror group, Fatih Shakaki, founder of Islamic Jihad, Ahmed Yassin, founder of Hamas, Arafat, and on and on and on. So the new students there to open the year at Al-Quds University, which I believe is, this is the Dura branch in Samaria, I believe. Students were welcomed this week at a reception by a large banner talking about Palestinian, what they call Palestinian heroes. What does it mean to be a Palestinian hero? Well, you found Hamas, or you're a head leader of the PLO or Fatah or the PLFP. These are the people who are inspiring the next generation of youth coming out of the Palestinian Authority-controlled territories. That's why I'm pessimistic when it comes to peace, because of what the enemy is teaching their children. And let's define them as the enemy. Those leaders in the PLO, the PA, Hamas, they are teaching the next generation to hate Jews. The only good Jew is a dead Jew. This is what they're teaching them on a daily basis, praising those who have the blood of hundreds and thousands, over 1,000 Jews and Israelis on their hands. But these are the heroes they look up to. This is what they're being taught at the university level. So what can you expect? They're being taught this at the kindergarten level as well. In other news here, speaking of terrorism, this is actually agricultural terrorism. I spoke about this near Rosh Hashanah. I talked about the award-winning honey farm in Kedumim in the Shomron in Samaria, which had all of its honey for the Rosh Hashanah holiday and all of its equipment stolen by Arabs in nearby villages. Well, this agricultural terrorism has happened again, reported by Israel Hayom. Some 27 adults, 40 underage suspects from the PA, Palestinians, Arabs, were caught red-handed hauling nearly 30 tons of tomatoes and grapes from Jewish-owned greenhouses near Hebron. This reported again by Israel Hayom. This happened just several days ago. Security forces were called after suspicious movement was in the area. Border police and IDF troops came in and caught, you're talking about 67 people adults and youth who are hauling off, stealing produce, grapes, tomatoes, and whatnot, other vegetables from Jews near the Hebron area. So unfortunately, a lot of the time, these are our neighbors. This is what we are dealing with here in Israel, and in this case specifically in Judea and Samaria. Some positive news, I mean, it's somewhat positive. Israel is considering, the Knesset is considering repealing the Disengagement Law, what is known as the Disengagement Law from 2005 in northern Samaria. If you remember, in 2005, 10,000 Jewish residents of Gush Etzion in Gaza were thrown out of their homes, along with residents of 4 communities in northern Samaria. And, you know, the whole concept of disengagement was that Jews would be removed from the area. And, you know, obviously it was a horrible mistake, which saw the increase in rockets. And those areas would be turned over to the Palestinian Authority. And Gaza, eventually Hamas took over. In northern Samaria, the Jews were thrown out of their homes, but the army remained there. So what was the point of throwing the Jews out of their homes? I can't figure out. I'm not sure. The military continue to hold on to that land here, as reported by the Jerusalem Post, and the Israeli legislation was put together by Betzalel Smotrich and Shuli Raphaeli from the Beit HaYehudi party, saying that that law, which called for the eviction of Jews from those 4 communities in northern Shomron and northern Samaria, should be repealed. So that's good news that the legislation is on the table. However, this morning, Sunday morning, the ministers pushed off here in the legislative committee, the ministerial legislative committee, they pushed off carrying out a vote on whether or not they were going to repeal the law, which would then eventually let people move back into those communities, reestablish those Jewish communities. They pushed it off. Now, that's a bad sign that they pushed it off. It's a good sign that it's at least on the table for now. I'm hoping that they don't continue to push it off. I'm hoping that they vote on it, and I'm hoping it passes to undo that mistake. That's why your pencils have erasers. Let's undo that mistake and let the Jews rebuild the communities in the northern Shomron and then eventually Gush Etzion, but at least let's start there. It made absolutely no sense, and here we are 12 years later from pulling these people out of their homes in those 4 communities for no apparent reason. Since the military is still there, why couldn't the residents stay there? That's a question I can't answer, unfortunately. But hopefully justice will be sought, and hopefully people will be allowed to rebuild those destroyed communities. So that's a little positive news that it's actually on the table, and we'll see where that goes. And just want to share. Before we go, just want to share an inspiring story with all of this, unfortunately, news of terror and news of rocket attacks and attacks from Syria and whatnot. This past Friday, again, to my listeners who did not hear last week's show, I've assumed a new position here working with the Gush Etzion Foundation, a very important organization that does so much to help and improve the lives, enhance the lives of the residents of Gush Etzion, whether it's security projects or educational projects or playgrounds or whatever it is. The Gush Etzion Foundation is here to improve and enhance the lives with all of our partners in the Gush Etzion block just south of Jerusalem. So Friday, I was at an amazing dedication ceremony in the community of Meitzad, which happens to be ultra-orthodox, as some call Haredi, 70 families living in eastern Gush Etzion. So on Friday, a new park was dedicated. It was a partnership between the Gush Etzion Foundation and a friend of mine, Dov Ben-Sion Gelman, and his organization, My Brother's Keeper International. They do amazing work here in Israel. The two got together, and a new park was built for these kids, Haredi children, in Meitzad, who'd had nothing to play with, who were playing. When Dov saw it originally, he told the story how they were playing with metal pipes and gravel and dirt. And he said, this is not fair. We need to do something. So money was raised and allocated. And here we are this past Friday. You can see the pictures on my Facebook page or on the Gush Etzion Foundation Facebook page. A new park was dedicated in memory of Benaya Sarel, a soldier who fell in the Gaza war in 2014. And his family was there in attendance. It was a very moving and emotional day. moving and emotional experience and event. But at the end of the day, it was amazing to see the children there playing in the playground, having a place to play, thanks to the generosity of so many. Especially relevant this week after we saw here in Israel an extremist branch of those who call themselves ultra-orthodox, who are protesting against the IDF, against the state of Israel, protesting because several members of their group were arrested for failing to show up at an IDF recruitment branch, blocking Jerusalem traffic. Thousands of people were stranded, could not get home. I think it was on Thursday of last week. So, unfortunately, that caused, a bad name for people to stereotype the Haredi community as a whole for these extremists who were protesting the IDF. But here you had a ceremony on Friday where you had IDF soldiers, you had people in Israel with kippot, without kippot, you had national religious, you had secular, you had female soldiers, all gathering together at this ceremony. People are wearing black hats, wearing suede kippas, wearing knitted kippas, no kippas, all together on a hilltop in Judea on Friday to dedicate a playground to Haredi, the Haredi community of Meitzad. And it was one emotional moment, in addition to the speeches and the Sarel family being there, when I saw an IDF soldier without a kippah on his head and a Haredi man, a young man, embrace at the end of this ceremony. And that right there just shows what potential unity we can have in this country, whether it's unfortunately sometimes in bad times, but also in good times for good things like opening a playground for children. It can happen, people. There can be unity here in this country. And that event with so many different segments of society coming together for a park for children who live in Judea, who are of the Haredi persuasion, the Haredi group, or ultra-orthodox, or whatever label you want to put on them, but just a group of Jews gathering on a Friday in Judea and dedicating a playground was a meaningful and moving experience. Go check out the pictures on my Facebook page. I think we're going to end on that positive note. Again, get in touch with me during the week. It's josh@thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter @JoshHasten. Broadcasting to you from Gush Etzion. Shout out to my main man, Binyamin Bresky, who puts all this audio together. And a big shout out also to all the other hosts, my colleagues here on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week, everybody out there should be safe and sound. Everybody have a great week. Shalom, shalom from Judea, Israel. All the best. Goodbye.
Hi, this is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. You can hear a new show from me every Sunday, and every day of the week, shows from another one of my very talented fellow show hosts. Reach me, Eve, at thelandofisrael.com, and keep listening, everybody. We love your feedback. The Land of Israel, coming at you every day, every week. That's the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.